Hello, boys and girls. Today's book is called Dinosaurs at the Supermarket, written by Lindsay Camp and illustrated by Clark Skilbeck. Dinosaurs at the Supermarket. Once there was a little girl called Laura whose best friend was a crocodile. He wasn't a very big crocodile or very fierce. In fact, he was rather shy and he liked being tickled. His name was Brigadier Simpson. Laura's father couldn't see Brigadier Simpson. Actually, nobody. And people were always stepping on his tail and sitting on him. One day, Laura and Brigadier Simpson were in the garden digging for buried treasure. They found a stone with a swirly round pattern on it. Laura took it inside to her father. It's a fossil, he said. What's a fossil? Asked Laura. Well, answered father, it's difficult to explain. It's sort of what is left of the bones of creatures who died out millions of years ago, long before there were even people on Earth. Like dinosaurs, you mean? Said Laura's father, turning back to his computer. Something like that. Laura was very excited and hurried back to Brigadier Simpson. Daddy says it's a dinosaur bone. It's called a hmm, I can't remember what it's called, but it's definitely a dinosaur bone. The dinosaur must have lived in our garden. She looked around doubtfully. The garden wasn't very big, and there was barely any room for a jungle gym. Still, Brigadier Simpson was looking very nervous. Don't worry, said Laura. He's not here anymore. Daddy said all the dinosaurs died millions of years ago. That night, Laura slept with the dinosaur bone under her pillow. The next day, she carried it everywhere. She even carried it into her bath, where she had a very scary thought. What if the dinosaur wasn't really dead? What if he wanted his bone back? She didn't say anything to Brigadier Simpson because she didn't want him. She didn't want to frighten him. Later, when her father had finished reading her bedtime story, she asked him if he was really sure about all the dinosaurs being dead. Very sure, said father. Now go to sleep. When Laura looked out the window in the morning, there was a dinosaur. He tried to hide behind the shed where the lawnmower lived, but he wasn't quick enough. Laura had seen him. Laura got out of her dinosaur book. There, on the front, was the same dinosaur. Laura asked her father what the dinosaur on the book was called. He said it was a Tyrannosaurus Rex, and it was definitely dead. But Laura knew he was wrong. Later, Laura saw the dinosaur again. This time, he didn't hide, and this time, he wasn't alone. He was with his friends, and they were whispering together. Laura knew they were talking about how to get the bone back. Laura wondered what to do. If she gave the bone back, the dinosaurs might go away. But she didn't want to give it back. It was her treasure, and she was sure the dinosaur could manage without one tiny bone. Laura decided to keep the bone. She looked, she still took it everywhere. But now the dinosaurs followed her. She saw them outside the supermarket. They had put their huge feet in shopping carts and were whizzing around as if they were roller skates. She saw them at the library where they were stamping and roaring so loudly it was difficult for Laura to choose her book. When she went to school the next day, they were waiting in the playground. All day they took turns peering at her through her classroom window. But the funny thing was, the dinosaurs didn't do anything to Laura. They didn't chase her, they didn't jump out at her when she wasn't expecting, and they didn't try to catch Brigadier Simpson and hold him prisoner until Laura gave back the bone. They just followed her everywhere. Then one day, Laura's class went on a trip to the museum. Then the dinosaurs came too. They seemed to like the museum. Upstairs, they went into the big room full of glass cases where old things. Inside, clack, 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 clack went Laura's shoes on the shiny floor. Clump, clump, clump went the dinosaur's feet. Suddenly, Laura stopped and stared. In a glass case right in front of her was a dinosaur bone exactly like hers. It was a lot bigger, but it was definitely a bone from the same dinosaur. Laura looked back at the dinosaurs, and they seemed angry, showing their teeth and pushing into the room. Softly, she asked the museum lady about the bone. It's called ammonite, she said, and when it was alive, it was a little creature, like a small that lived under the sea. Laura couldn't believe her ears. A snail? But hadn't Daddy said that it was a dinosaur bone? And if it wasn't, why were the dinosaurs following her? Laura turned around quickly, and the dinosaurs were gone. Laura thought that the dinosaurs might be waiting in the playground back at the school, but they weren't. And they weren't in the garden when she got home either. They definitely disappeared. That night, Laura felt sad. When her father finished reading her story, he saw she was crying. What's the matter? He said. You remember that dinosaur bone I found in the garden? I'm sure you said it was a dinosaur bone, but it wasn't. It was a snail. The lady at the museum told me. Laura's father hugged her and said, I'm sorry. It was my fault. I was busy and didn't explain properly when you showed it to me. That's all right, Daddy, said Laura. She still felt sad, but stopped crying when Daddy kissed her that night. Brigadier Simpson, who didn't want Daddy to see him, waited until Daddy was gone before he snuggled into bed with Laura, and soon they were both asleep. The next morning, Laura felt better. The sun was shining, and Brigadier Simpson was already bouncing around. Laura looked at him, and there was something different about him. She closed her eyes, then looked again. There was no doubt about it. Something had happened to Brigadier Simpson in the night. He wasn't a crocodile anymore. He was a dinosaur, just like the first one that Laura had seen in her garden. Laura jumped happily out of bed. Come on, she said. We better hurry, or we'll be late for school. I hope you had fun today's story and you come back for more. Thank you for listening.